So today's lecture will be about social accounting matrices. I will take us through three steps. First, social accounting matrix as a data set, and then social accounting matrix for linear type of modeling, and finally, social accounting matrix for non-linear modeling. And I'll try to do them sequentially. I will also draw our attention to the social aspects of this social accounting, particularly gender aspects, how to incorporate gender and do modeling to have interesting questions modeled that relate to gender in societies. Okay, without further ado, let me take you through the slides, and in appropriate places I will refer to the handouts. Okay, first I want to give you a brief history of SAM, and then what is a good SAM with respect to gender, a partial survey of SAMs for India, and some modeling issues, and finally conclusions and ideas for future work. We can go way, way back, actually, to 4th century before the current era. This famous writer in India, who was also a minister in one of the early empires in India, a very powerful minister, in fact, also a spy master. He controlled a whole ring of spies throughout the empire, a diplomat. So he was kind of all things rolled into one. And his name is still invoked to refer to somebody who is both brilliant and very controlling. And Arthashastra literally means economics. But of course, the subject of economics did not exist as it does today in 4th century before the current era India. What he calls Arthashastra is kind of Adam Smith, Machiavelli, and a few other authors rolled into one. Part of it was about collecting taxes and running the economics of an empire. But the other part was about foreign relations, the role of emperor as a statesman, and part of it was also about controlling the population. And in this part especially, he talks about collecting all kinds of information about the people, and not because he wanted to do something good for them, but really he wanted the emperor to be able to control them. And then you find many of these kinds of socioeconomic description throughout Indian history. In 6th, 7th century, there was a traveler from China who recorded in great detail the economic statistics of India. In fact, that is one of the most reliable sources for the socioeconomic history of that period in Indian history. It's widely used by historians. In the 14th century, this traveler from today's Morocco, Ibn Battuta, came via Egypt and Middle East, traveling a long way, and collected and wrote down a lot of information about the main crops, the main products, their prices. He even recorded how much a servant would cost. I suppose he needed them. And that's very detailed too. So these are kind of early non-Western sources of social accounting. I am pretty certain that if a historian were to look in China, they would find this type of work as well, because China also was a very organized society from almost time immemorial. When we come to the modern age, William Petty is the first important thinker. In fact, he may be the father of political economy, and he certainly invented this discipline, which he called political arithmetic. The idea was, again, like Arthashastra of Kautilya, to collect information to control the people. He was actually, among other things, an administrator in Ireland, colonial Ireland, and he was a very tough and even ruthless, you might say, administrator. So Irish do not like Petty very much, those Irish who read history, and many do. But Petty was very brilliant in many ways. And without wanting to, perhaps, he ended up pinpointing the need for collecting social and economic statistics in a coherent fashion. The next important person is Gregory King. And Gregory King's work, which depicted the socioeconomic conditions in England in 1688, really can be called something like modern social accounting matrix, which we will be coming to pretty soon. But Gregory King took great pains going from parish to parish and using mainly parish records and other records whenever he could lay his hands on them to create a fairly comprehensive picture of different social groups in England in the year 1688 and their socioeconomic status. It was not complete, but compared to everything else that I know of before King's work, it was a tremendous step forward in this field. So King can probably, with more justification than anyone else in that list, be called the father of social accounting matrix. But we have to go a little farther into the continent. François Quesnay is famous for inventing a way of valuing social product. According to Quesnay, agriculture was the source of all wealth. And you can see how, in a commonsensical way, in a pre-industrial Europe, that would be a pretty good guess, because agriculture seemingly was what produced things. By the way, although I have not read anything scholarly on this, I would conjecture that the Confucian idea that peasants actually were above merchants probably comes from a similar kind of consideration, that farmers produce things, merchants simply exchange things. But that was before the manufacturing phase of capitalism. And therefore, you can see how people would associate agricultural goods with wealth. By the way, Adam Smith had a huge debate with Quesnay's ideas. Quesnay presented this whole thing as a table, which was quite elegant. He was a doctor by trade, so he saw the circulation in the economy as the circulation of blood. So his analogy was the human body and circulation within the human body of human blood. But he was at least half right about the economy, that economy is a circulating type of entity. You do have all kinds of circulations going on in the economy. Lagrange, who was a brilliant physicist, mathematician, was also very interested in these issues and developed some of these ideas formally further. But the real advance in terms of structure of an economy and flows in the economy really was made by Adam Smith. He had a lot of debates with Quesnay, and the major point of disagreement between him and Quesnay was simply that Quesnay thought agriculture was the source of all wealth. Smith said no, labor was the source of all wealth. And this was a very modern idea, that labor, which can be used in just about anything, including agriculture, produced wealth. And this was something that initially Petty had some inkling of, but Petty did not develop this idea. Smith did. And following Smith, Ricardo developed it further. Marx then took it several steps further by identifying the investment goods sector and consumption goods sector in a capitalist economy. Marx actually simplified things a lot more than others. One might say abstracted it further by isolating labor and capital as the only two relevant entities when we consider social production. Land was there in the background, but you didn't need land to create a theory of capitalism, which is one of the key differences between Ricardo and Marx. But Marx was not a very good mathematician. He failed to actually formulate this mathematically very well. He struggled, and he might have succeeded had he lived longer. But as you know, he published only one volume of his greatest work, Capital, the first volume in 1867, and he had copious notes, a lot of notes for the other two volumes, plus a fourth volume that he left as well. So we have two posthumous volumes of Capital, volumes 2 and volumes 3, volume 2 and volume 3, as well as a fourth volume called Theories of Surplus Value. And those are questionable kind of sources because, well, Theories of Surplus Value, the fourth volume of Capital, so-called, has mainly a history of thought, history of surplus. But in volume 2 and 3, he had made many notes, and Engels put them together. But he also made quite a few arithmetical mistakes in volume 3, and there are quite a few conceptual unclarities. But the basic idea of circulation in an economy, in a market economy, of capital goods and consumer goods is clear in Marx, especially in volume 2, at the end of volume 2. But he could not formulate it in as clear a term as the next person in the list did. And the next person in the list is Leontiev. Vasily Leontiev was a Russian who went to university during and shortly after the First World War and the Revolution. He had read Marx, so he had some ideas about the economy as a circulating system already. But because he was a much better mathematician, he was able to isolate and create what we can call an input-output system mathematically. The problem he posed was, suppose there are n sectors in the economy, generalizing from the two sector of Marx. And these n sectors each produce a single output. Then how should we define this economic system? And is there a solution to this economic system? Can it actually produce outputs given certain vector of inputs? So this was the mathematical problem, and he solved it under some conditions, of course. And those results are available, but I won't go through them. The next important thinker conceptually is Sraffa. Piero Sraffa was an Italian guy who fled Mussolini's fascist Italy and sought refuge in Cambridge, England. And there he acted as a librarian. He was too shy to lecture and teach, I think. So he found his refuge in books in the library. And his life's work actually is a very good, annotated, scholarly, one might almost say definitive edition of Ricardo's work. And so Sraffa's school of thought sometimes is called the Neo-Ricardian school of thought. His interpretation of Ricardo is very classical. But the main problem Sraffa posed also was, can we have a system, an input-output system, that is non-neoclassical? That is, you don't have the kind of smooth demand and supply curves and a kind of price vector that you can claim as market clearing. CGE model is, in its strict interpretation, follows this neoclassical approach. But Sraffa posed the question of creating a non-neoclassical model, and he managed to solve this problem. So Sraffa's work is very important in this respect. The last name on the list, Stone, is important because Stone is the one who really developed the modern version of social accounting matrix. Stone was Keynes's research assistant, and so he learned from a very good master, and he wanted to create a system that would be able to tell us about the possibility of demand management, which really was Keynes's problem. In Leontief also you find this same problem, but Leontief did not himself think through the problem of effective demand and managing demand in a modern complex economy where you don't have full employment automatically. Stone did, and he got that from Keynes. And then to finish up this history, Simon Kuznets, who was another emigre from Russia to the United States, started working on these national income accounts in the 1930s and went quite far. He and others were also influenced by Jan Tinbergen, whose name many people are familiar with. Tinbergen came to economics from physics, and so he had a lot of interest in quantification, but he was also a social democrat, so he wanted economics to be used for the good of society. So he was very interested in the theory and practicalities of policymaking right from the beginning. And he recognized the importance of gathering the right kind of data. Then an Englishman, Piatt, and another Dutchman, Thorbecke, took Stone's work further and developed what we might call the modern version of social accounting matrix. And you can even define a kind of Cambridge Cornell Dutch school. Eric ended up in Cornell eventually, having got a PhD from Berkeley and then having taught at Iowa. His early work is actually a lot of agricultural modeling, because in Iowa you have one of the best quantitative agricultural economics departments. So I guess in some sense, if Stone and Tinbergen are the grandfathers and Piatt, Thorbecke are the fathers, then I am the third generation in this work of social accounting matrix. But what is a SAM? Okay. Before we talk about what is a good gender-aware SAM, we have to talk about what is a good SAM. And in the first handout, which is from the book that I did with Eric, it's called Macroeconomic Effects and Diffusion of Alternative Technologies Within a Social Accounting Matrix Framework. What we did in this book was to create a SAM for Indonesia, which disaggregated many sectors according to technologies. So this is, in the context of when it was done, a major innovation in the literature. But if you go to the next page, you can see a table which is a SAM, which is compressed, of course. But you can see three major kind of sets of accounts are here: factors, all kinds of land, labor, capital, and other natural resources that are used in production as factors. And then we have institutions and households and companies. So this actually covers the whole socioeconomic spectrum, not just companies, but also households and institutions. And I will have more to say about them soon. And then the sum of other accounts. The other accounts may be government account, for example, saving and investment, and importantly, rest of the world. So this gives you a total snapshot of the economy at any point in time, including the interchanges between the economy and the rest of the world. So this is complete in that sense, conceptually. And this follows a single entry accounting system. That is important to remember, that it's a single entry accounting system. Every flow is recorded both as an expenditure and as a receipt at the same time. How do we do that? Simply by looking at the property of the matrix. That's very elementary. A matrix must have rows and columns. So we define, by convention, expenditures as flowing from column to the rows. Then the rows record receipts. And the beauty of matrix format of presentation is that every cell in the matrix, every element in the matrix is the intersection of a certain row and certain column. So just by one entry, you can define the flow of expenditure from a column to a certain row. So here, for example, factors are distributing something to institutions, households, and companies. This is given by this T21, T subscript 21 in the diagram. Okay, so that's a simple thing that you can remember. Also, by definition, this sometimes I call this the law of conservation in economics. Expenditures must equal receipts, right? Things must add up. This is actually an accounting convention. Expenditures must equal receipt. So every row total must be equal to the corresponding column total, and vice versa. Okay. So this basic identity has to be used in modeling. So now we have expenditures and receipts and the basic layout of the SAM. And then you can have as many rows and columns as you want. You can be as detailed as you want given the data. The only constraint is the availability of data. So conceptually, the system is a very open system. You can record many, many things if you want. Now we have to think of modeling. Well, one way of modeling is to identify endogenous accounts and exogenous accounts, something that we know from our modeling of simultaneous equation system. So you begin to see that this is also going to be in the broad class of general equilibrium models, that the economy is seen as an interdependent set of entities with interrelationships, and you have to solve out the equations to find the right equilibrium. So the three most important accounts here are shown as the endogenous accounts that will be determined within the model: factors, institutions and households and companies, and production activities. Now these production activities are the ones that originally would be part of Leontief's input-output system. Okay, so this is a schematic description of the SAM. If we go to the next page, page 24 of our book, you can see the accounts in this SAM. I just reproduced some columns for you so that you can read across the rows. And in terms of factors, you can see that there are 23 or maybe more than that, 23 factors of production. So that's quite detailed. You can go even farther. You can make 230 or 23,000 if you want factors of production. You could define each kind of